I'll go to Alfredo Arteaga if he is ready to talk some Miami Dolphins with me. The man, the myth, the legend from 3 yards per carry. Hello, Alfredo.
Did anything happen while I was gone?
Oh, my God. Well, what about when I was gone? It's funny, Alfredo, because I did a show, obviously, every weekday. I did a show last Friday, and we were just talking about, roster cuts, and we will get to some of that because that's a big thing hanging over our head over the next 27 and a half hours. But, yeah, all this, the renewed Deshaun Watson stuff just really kind of fell into our laps. And I was happy that Lewis pointed out in the chat that Big E, found this interview with Charles Robinson, who was the guy who restoked these flames, basically saying he doesn't know whether or not these teams are talking with Houston right now. And I take some comfort in that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Alf, where do you sit on this idea? Because with how much better I see Tua getting and the way the team is getting built around him, and of course the cloud that's hanging over Deshaun Watson's head, I would be livid if they were to make this trade. Where do you fall on this?
Well, I was driving back from the Keys yesterday, and I kept hearing this little ping on my phone going ping, ping. And it did so about 40, 50 times. And I was wondering, who knows? Maybe there was a terrorist attack or something. It seems that terrorist was Charles Robinson because what he dropped online and now how he's walking it back is, I don't know, it's journalistic malpractice, I think.
Yeah.
He's essentially saying he really didn't know, and he even used the term process of elimination to get to who is actually trading for Deshaun Watson. Yeah, I'm completely with you. Like, Chris Greer would not be doing his job if he didn't at least play some phone calls. Yeah. Because there is a sweetheart scenario. If the Houston Texans are willing to sell cheap on Deshaun Watson, Dolphins can trade for him, stash him for a year, and then this will be Tua's rehearsal for the season. And if Tua's good, then you sell Deshaun Watson to the highest bidder. If Tua's bad, then you already have your quarterback, and then you sell Tua to the highest bidder. So there's a sweetheart scenario. Now, is Houston really going to part with Deshaun Watson for, next to nothing as far as value-wise? I doubt it. So I think that they'll hold to their guns. I've always had the gut feeling that Deshaun Watson would end up playing in 2022 in Houston for the Texans. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's the trajectory we will end up on.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, before you came on, I talked about Houston's options, right? Because they need to figure something out in the next 24 hours, whether they trade him, if they just decide to pretend he's injured and stash him on the IR or, pay him not to play. Then you've got a 52-man roster essentially, which kind of sucks for them. So they've got to figure out. So you're saying you think the most likely scenario is he actually plays for the Houston Texans this year?
Or next year. I say next year. I think he plays next. I think they stash him for the year. And think about it. Like right now, you have all of this hanging over his head, possible criminal charges.
Yeah.
If all of that blows over, then he's twice as valuable. And then if you want to trade him, then you'll get more. And you probably will get your asking price if you're Houston. Because that way, the Dolphins would have seen Tua for a year. The Eagles would have seen Jalen Hurts for a year. And Carolina would have seen Sam Darnold for a year. So your three main suitors would be sitting there a little bit more desperate at the end of the year. So I think that this gets punted for a season until next year.
Do you think Brian Flores should have done a better job addressing it yesterday? Because he took a page out of the Belichick playbook. He could have killed the rumors off. So it led some people to say, hey, if he didn't kill it off, that means there must be something to it. Like he said, I don't want to talk about anyone who's not on this roster. So he left the door open. Do you think Flores should have been more emphatic?
I think so. I think if he had communicated with Chris Greer, and maybe Chris Greer told him, yeah, we did speak to the Texans, a month back or 2 weeks ago. We spoke to them about, lowering their asking price. Maybe that conversation happened, and if that conversation happened, I could see Brian Flores being coy with it. If not, I think he should have just killed the rumor completely and just said, you know what, Tua Tagovailoa, hopefully he's healthy, and if he's healthy, he will play 17 games for us this year. And I think that's probably what he should have said. but he didn't. He did that coach speak thing. But, it is interesting that once before in this offseason or during training camp, when he was asked about Xavier Howard, and he finally put an end to those rumors when he said, we're not trading Xavier Howard, write that down. And maybe something like that would have been nice yesterday.
We're joined here by Alfredo Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I was not expecting to be as entertained as I was by the final preseason game where the Dolphins had third and fourth stringers. Like, that game was absolutely lit yesterday. I'm going to start chiseling the Reed Sinnott statue to put it right next to Dan Marino outside of Hard Rock Stadium. He was awesome. What do you think Reed's future holds? Practice squad, I'm sure, but do you think he could be, if nothing else, a future Dolphins backup, like a future second team guy?
Well, I'm completely with you. I was thoroughly entertained by that game. I finally got into my house like the start of the second quarter, so I missed the entire first quarter, and I saw fireworks, and it was fun. What a finish. But if you're a Reed Sinnett fan, that was not a good game for you, because I'm almost certain, I don't have any information on this, but I'm almost certain that this team, considering they have a lot of good players at linebacker, edge, even running back, they might want to keep 4 guys, especially wide receiver. They might want to keep 7 guys. Is there a way that they keep 3 quarterbacks? I think the chances of that are 0, right?
Yeah.
Which means that they're going to expose Reed Sinnett to the waiver wire. Man. I think that game probably got himself onto a team. I think that game, some team is going to say, you know what, let's carry 3. Let's see how it goes this year, and maybe he's a future backup quarterback for us. So if you're a fan of Reed Sinnett, I think, his days as a Dolphin are probably numbered. But if not, that's a guy that you want to bring back onto the practice squad, because you never know. Yeah. Maybe this guy's the next Matt Moore, You never know.
Yes, so you're right. So as a fan of Reed, I should have told him to tank yesterday. I should have been like, hey, listen, bro, throw a few more picks on purpose. Just don't look too good. I don't want you getting poached. So you're right about that. But hey, you mentioned a lot of depth. We'll circle back to wide receiver, but I want to talk about running backs first. Who do you think the 4 backs are going to be on this team? Because honestly, I liked what I saw yesterday, and he didn't get as much work on the ground, but Patrick Laird getting a couple of nice catches, and then Jared Dokes had some nice moments, scored 2 rushing touchdowns. So who are the 4 running backs going to end up being on this team?
Yeah, if you do some math with the roster, you kind of come to the realization like keeping 5 running backs is probably not going to happen. So they're probably going to keep 4, which means that 4th spot, if you believe that Malcolm Brown is a lock for the roster,
right? And
I happen to think that he's going to start the season with the Dolphins, and if it doesn't work out, maybe they just dump him or they trade him for maybe back to the Rams even. But if you believe that they're going to keep 4, then that 4th spot is a battle between Jordan Scarlett, Jared Dokes, and Patrick Laird. All 3 guys have cases to make. Jared Dokes' problem really is that he seems to be a gamer, but he's been bad in camp. He's had a drops problem all camp. You got to figure that Jordan Scarlett is probably on the outside looking in, and Patrick Laird is a guy who's done it before and plays special teams. So it's a tough decision. And which of the 2 can you probably stash in your practice squad? I'd say that Jared Dokes is probably a guy that you could pass off. Maybe they look at Jared Dokes as Malcolm Brown's backup. And if it doesn't work out with Malcolm Brown, maybe Jared Dokes can play. So I think Jared Dokes probably has the inside track.
Alfredo Arteaga with us here from 3 Yards Per Carry on Donno Daily. And you mentioned Malcolm Brown, like going to be on this team more than likely. Are you bullish on him? Are you happy about that addition?
I thought he looked good against Atlanta. I thought he looked terrible against the Bears.
Yeah.
It's either or. I like his energy in practice. A lot of people have compared him to Jordan Howard. People got to be a little bit more patient than that. Jordan Howard just did not look like he looked like he was done last year in training camp. Malcolm Brown is a guy that he plays with a lot of energy. He does all the drills 100%. Like, you watch him in practice and you could tell, okay, this is still a viable NFL player, not a guy on the way out. So I'm interested to see him in actual games that matter.
Moving on to wide receiver, and I know you love this guy as well. Are we going to be, unfortunately, having to throw a goodbye party for for Kirk Merritt, because if the Dolphins were to try to practice squad him, I could see him getting claimed. No, like, do you think he would actually even clear the waivers, or does he get a spot on the roster? Because if we're going based on merit, see what I did there? I think this guy is making a strong case to be on the team.
Yeah, he's had a good camp. There's no other way around it. He's had a good camp and good games too. Like, he's a gamer. Like, he's a guy who's shown up. But if you look at that wide receiver group, the good news is that you get to protect 4 guys on your practice squad. Those are guys that cannot be poached. I think Kirk Merritt might have gained himself one of those spots. But if you do the math again and you look at that wide receiver core, you got to think there's a trade coming. If there is no trade coming, there's going to be a cut tomorrow that's just going to blow us away. That we're going to be like, we did not see that coming.
Who's got the best trade value out of the fringe guys? Preston Williams, Jakeem Grant, assuming he's not safe. Who do you think has the most trade value?
Well, I think Jakeem Grant's a specialist. Like, what do teams trade for a specialist? A guy who just runs gimmick plays and is a good, very, very good all-pro level punt returner and kick returner. But what do teams pay for that? I think Preston Williams on potential alone could fetch you something better. So I think Preston Williams is probably the guy with the trade value right now.
How much? I mean, if Williams wasn't traded and he does make the roster, are you like me? Because obviously, when he's been on the field, especially last year, really productive on the field, the guy's hurt all the time. I'm not really, honestly, I wouldn't lose a second of sleep if they would trade him or even let him walk. Like, I wouldn't be that upset about it.
Yeah, he was a UDFA coming out. Everybody thought, this is a guy that would have been a second-round pick if he didn't have his off-the-field issues.
Yeah.
And, he kind of proved it. He kind of proved that he is an NFL player, and he was probably better than his UDFA status. So, you hit huge on this guy. But he's always injured. He's not available, and that's a problem, especially for your offense. If one of your lead receivers, one of your starting receivers, is a guy who can't be counted on. And I understand people are going to come back and say, look, what about Devontae Parker? I've tweeted this out 1,000 times, and I've said it on your show a bunch of times as well. Devontae Parker has missed 13 games in 6 years. Now, he may play injured, and he may have knick-knack injuries all the time, but he's in uniform, and he's lined up there on Sundays more often than not. Preston Williams, you can't make that case. Preston Williams is basically a part-time player. He's played half a season twice. So, the clock's ticking on him. This year, if he's injured once again, I think the NFL is going to notice it, and his trade value goes to nothing. So I would make him the most likely to be traded.
Alf, I've seen a couple of folks, even people within our network, just hypothesize what if the Dolphins would consider trading Devontae Parker, which I'm not a fan of, right? And I know, and I like these guys a lot, and we're going to have them on the shows. But Louis D. Sung brought up the possibility to me last week. I know our guy Hassan Patel has written about it. Not only in what you say is very true, even though he gets these nagging injuries all the time, he's usually getting on the field. He's just not practicing a lot. And part of my issue with the idea of trading Devontae Parker, not only do I think when healthy he's an excellent player, but the other thing of it is I'm not really a fan of trading a guy when his value isn't at the peak, because if you were really going to trade Devontae Parker, the time to do it would have been a year ago, where he was coming off an incredible 2020 season. His stock is lower in 2021 now than it was in 2020 because he did have injury issues last year. So I don't believe you'd be able to sell high. I believe that if you were to trade Devontae Parker right now compared to a year ago, you would be selling him at a discount. I just don't think it's the right time to make a move like that. So I am not a fan of it. Do you think there's any possibility they would consider trading Devontae Parker?
I hope not, and I wouldn't trade him either. And I'll tell you this: most of the people that are making the case for Devontae Parker, they always have the caveat. You know what? Preston Williams could do his job, or maybe even Matt Collins could do his job. If you look at the wide receiver core as it's constructed, there's really only one guy that you can rely on to play physically, and that's Devontae Parker. Can you trust Preston Williams?
No.
To be out there for 16 games? No, you can't. And I like Mike Collins. Mike Collins is a great football player. Like, you win with guys like that at the bottom of your roster. You don't win with guys like that starting, okay, at the X receiver. So Devontae Parker, I think, is valuable in the sense of how he plays, his style of play, and as a security blanket that's gonna erase some of Tua's mistakes this year. That's one thing you have to understand. Devontae Parker, when he wins 50-50 balls, will erase some mistakes.
Yeah.
That are usually interceptions with somebody else.
And I want to be fair to our guy Lewis, because I don't want to mischaracterize his words, and we're going to bring him on this week as well. He says, I'll clarify one more time. I am not advocating a trade. He says, only saying he has the most value to another team. Devontae Parker should stay. So yeah, I don't want to make it sound like Lewis is trying to, drive him out of town or anything like that. So that's fair.
And another thing, and I completely agree for the most part with Lewis, he would get them the biggest haul. Like, I think some team, a contender, is going to look at Devontae Parker and is going to, see how he would fit with their team and say, you know what, it might be worth it for a run at the Super Bowl to unload a second-round pick on the Dolphins. I think it's entirely possible something like that could happen. I don't think it would, and I don't think it should. Another thing about Devontae Parker, his contract's a dream. While you have other players overperform their contracts, Dolphins are laughing all the way to the bank with this contract, and then they're looking at him saying, "We're getting this production for this amount of money," and he's happy, and he's not complaining about it. Yeah, you don't trade guys like that.
Now, so many of these depth questions we have leading into the deadline tomorrow, 4 p.m., to get the roster down to 53. We've talked so much about the offense. Could there, Alf, be any roster decisions on the defensive side of the football that are going to really shock fans, or is it more straightforward? Like, is my guy Sam Egwavon safe, who balled out in that second preseason game? Could there be anything on defense that surprises us?
I think Sam Egwavon is safe for two reasons. First of all, he seems to be firmly entrenched as a scrape linebacker on the second team. That's important because you want a capable backup for Jerome Baker, especially on this type of defense. So I think he's safe. I think as far as an important battle to look for, is there going to be anything that's going to wow us? I doubt it. But Jason Strawbridge is a guy who was drafted last year. I think he's in there for the last defensive end spot against Tyson Render. One of those two has to go. And in my opinion, it should be Strawbridge. I think Strawbridge hasn't shown enough in the last 2 years. But other than that, on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's extremely set.
Yeah.
Like I don't see where we're going to get wowed by a cut. I think there's some good battles. Javaris Davis and Preston Williams is worth watching because I think one of them also has to go. And I think they're both capable players. So other than that, I don't think we're in for any surprises on the defensive side of the ball.
Really well said here. Alfredo Arteaga. You want to check out his work on the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. Very popular, and there's a reason why. These guys do a fantastic job. 3 Yards Per Carry here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Alf, thank you so much, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.